The Powers Project.
Hello, friends. You've been hearing me talk about intake breathing for quite a while now. And so today I thought I'd show you what it's all about. So it comes in this nice little compartment here with the nose tabs and with the magnetic strip that goes over the top. And this little thing here connects the tabs put on your nose. Now, what I'm going to do is I will end up editing this because I don't have a mirror in front of me. So when I come back, you're going to see the little tabs. So what I'll do, I'll show you here. So we'll take these tabs out like this. Mm-mm. And so what you do is you take this little thing that has a magnet on the end and you bring it up like that. And there is your tab. Okay. And then what you do is you put it on your nose. Actually, I put it this way. You put one on this side and then you put one on this side, and then the magnetic strip goes across. And what you'll find is that it works immediately. As soon as you put that strip across, it pulls your nasal passage, the nose open so that you can breathe more. And as you're going to find with this episode that I did with Kristys, that in order to obtain better health, we need to breathe through our nose. And this is the thing that will do that. The reason why I love this product is because it eliminated my snoring problem that I had. And it also obviously helps me with my athletic performance when I'm lifting weights and when I'm doing my stationary bike. It's amazing. You just it gives you more energy, and like I've said before, when I'm lifting weights, when I have this on, I'm doing 2 extra reps than when I don't. You wouldn't think it would make that big of a difference, but it really does. And the wonderful thing I love about this is the people who are part of intake breathing, Alex and Natalie, they're just great people, and they offer a money back guarantee. If it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, they will gladly return your money. They're just a great company. They're great people, and this is a great product. So I'll be right back with the little tabs on, and then I'll put the magnetic strip on, and you'll see what it looks like. Okay, and we're back. So as you can see, I have the little tabs on my nose. And the two things I need to show you. One is that when you pick up this tab, you'll notice these little white tabs, the little that are on the back of it, and those peel off and then they stick to your nose. Before you do that, however, step I forgot is you're going to want to, and this comes with everything you need. So this is a little alcohol wipe. You just take this off and open this up, wipe your nose off before you stick these on, okay? And then it's this easy. So you can see the way my nose looks now. The good thing I cleaned all the hair out of there. And you can see how it opens it up immediately. And this just keeps you from breathing through your mouth in the night, and therefore you don't need to snore any longer. And I know if you have a special somebody you sleep with, they're going to appreciate that. So now, as before, you can go over to intakebreathing.com and you can apply the promo code POWERS and you can get 20% off your order. So, like I said, there's nothing to lose and everything to gain because you have a money back guarantee. And Natalie and Alex are just two of the greatest people you'd ever want to meet. Two really super nice people. And they stand behind their product, and it's easy because it's a great product. So, go over to intakebreathing.com, use the promo code POWERS, get your 20% off your order, and you'll be happy. And so will your partner. I'm here with Kristy Sumner today. She is one half of the Soul Sisters Paranormal. Um, and your sister is the other half, correct, Jenny?
Correct. Yes, my twin sister, Jenny.
All right. So I have to, the first question that comes to mind is how do two sisters get into ghost hunting?
Well, it honestly started for us as a girls' trip, a girls' weekend. In 2013, we had the opportunity to go to Moundsville Penitentiary, which is one of the most haunted locations in the country. And it was actually my twin sister, our younger sister, and then a couple of friends, female friends. And we stayed the night in the West Virginia State Penitentiary just to kind of see, what it was like, if we could capture anything that we felt was compelling paranormal activity. It was a very rudimentary investigation. And we left that investigation with what we felt was compelling evidence, such as, footsteps that we couldn't explain, door slams that we couldn't explain, voices that weren't ours, any of ours in the group. We were catching those on our voice recorders. So when we left that experience, we decided to form Soul Sisters Paranormal. And basically we go around the country to historic and haunted locations, really telling the narrative, the historical narrative of each location, and then coupling that with any paranormal activity that we find. So we did have a group of 5 females, up until last year, up until 2020. And then we really decided to go to a 2 investigator format with just my twin sister, Jenny, and I really taking the lead on the investigation portion of the team. So every now and then the other members will join us. But for right now, Jenny and I make up the bulk of Soul Sisters Paranormal.
So when you went to this first place that you went to, you were prepared, like you already had some equipment that you brought with you, so that you had the intention, so I guess what I'm saying is that you already knew that you wanted to investigate this place. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go have a fun weekend and see if we get scared. You really went there to investigate right off the bat. Is that correct?
Well, in a small sense, yes. Again, we'd never done anything like this before. Now, we had watched the ghost hunters and ghost adventurers and such on television, and we always said to ourselves, if we could go on a paranormal investigation, we would do something maybe a little bit different. Like, why didn't they ask these questions here? Why didn't they use this technique? So we decided if we ever got the chance, we would do some of those things. And we all come from a research background, a very academic background. So, for example, I've got a PhD, my twin has a PhD. We've got 2 JDs and then a master's holder that make up the team. And so for us, we really wanted to go in with a scientific mindset. So really to control for things that we could, like noise pollution, light pollution, or at least find those sources to see if that was what was contributing to paranormal activity. And so to your point, when we went in, we did go in with the mindset of an investigation, but it was very, like I said, small scale, rudimentary. We had a couple of night vision video cameras, 1 digital camera, and a couple voice recorders. And that was really the bulk of our equipment base. And just through those small, simple tools, we were able to capture those things, which again, I felt was very compelling. And so after that, we had such a great time doing that and such an interesting adventure that we decided to really formalize Soul Sisters Paranormal to get a team feel, if you will, and then go to these historic locations around the country.
So, okay. Well, because one of my questions was going to be when you investigate, do you go into this investigation to debunk things or to prove to prove that it's real, or do you just go in with an open mind and go, we'll find what we find?
Okay, and that's a great question. What we go in with is what I call a healthy skepticism, a skepticism of the activity that has already been found by other teams, or if we're the first team in a location, a very healthy skepticism that maybe we're not going to catch anything that we can't, that is unexplainable to us that night. So we go in with the mindset of, we're going to put out all of this equipment in the hopes of finding something. But if we don't, we understand that. And we also control for things, like I said, those environmental things that may be contributing to what others are perceiving as paranormal. So for example, we were asked to investigate a business. This guy called us and he said, I want you to investigate my business. I'm sure it's haunted. My night vision video cameras are going off. And I know that there's a spirit in here. It's haunted. We said, okay. So he has a storefront, and the storefront is all glass. He has some glass display cases, some mirrors down the wall. And so we went into this location during the night, and we had some other equipment with us, and we weren't really feeling anything paranormal. None of our equipment was alarming as it should. If we sent something that's paranormal, we weren't really getting the feel that there was anything spiritual or paranormal going on in this location. So we left some of our night vision video cameras in this location overnight, and we left the building. So we locked up and everybody's gone from the building. And so when we came back the next morning, I asked him, I said, did your night vision video cameras go off during the night? And he said, oh yeah, something was playing with it. And I said, well, give me those timestamps, and I'm going to cross-reference those with my night vision video cameras. So we did that. And what I found was the way his storefront is positioned, he's on a highway that has a high volume of U-turn traffic. So when the cars would make U-turns during the night, their headlights would go into the building, bounce off the mirrors, and essentially blind his night vision video camera to turn them off and then turn them back on after the car passed. So it essentially looked like something was messing with his camera if you really weren't looking for something physical causing it. And so I told him, just either move the mirrors or adjust the angle of your camera, and I think your paranormal activity, quote unquote, will go away. And it did. So that's how we approach an investigation. We go in and we look for things that, could be contributing to the quote unquote haunting. Is there airplane traffic, train traffic? What do the street lights look like? What does the traffic look like going by? Is it in a position where a lot of wind is going to come through? So things like that. And then when we control for all of those things, but when we come away with evidence that we still can't explain, then we call that unexplainable evidence.
Do you ever feel bad when you have to go, yeah, you're not haunted, and then they get this disappointed look on their face, like, no?
No, I don't, because, for us, I think it leads to the credibility of everything that we do. And so, I can understand somebody's, kind of fascination with their place may be haunted. But again, for us, we really are trying to find the truth here. So instead of saying, yeah, you do have something haunted, if we can find a plausible explanation, that's really what I feel that our job is.
That's one of the things because I used to watch Ghost Hunters, and I liked the show a lot because I felt like that was how they approached things as well. Unlike a lot of the other shows, like I can't remember the name of the one knucklehead that always tried to make everything so dramatic, but there were these, those people out there trying to sensationalize things and make something out of nothing. And I always felt like Ghost Hunters, kept true to trying to find what really was behind it, And and that sounds like that's exactly what you do as well, but you're an entire female team. So you're the female Ghostbusters or.
Yeah, essentially we are. I mean, we don't have, plasma beams and we don't cross streams or anything like that. But, otherwise, yeah, that's pretty accurate. But, like I said, we watch those shows as well. And when you watch those television shows, you've got to go in with a mindset of, their entire reason for being is to build an audience base. And most of their audience base wants to see something sensational. And so there is that aspect of sensationalism. So while a lot of them do go in with that research-minded, mindset, you do have to go into account that it is a television show. And so a lot of it mirrors kind of what we do, but then some of it doesn't. Like, for example, our investigations last for maybe, from anywhere from 10 to, in some cases, 24 hours. But we haven't done an investigation over 24 hours. When they go into a location, they're filming for an entire week. They have a production staff. They have, all of these things that most paranormal groups don't have. And so you've really got to remember that when you watch some of these television shows. And so to the fact that they've done a great job of showcasing that paranormal investigators are out there, they've really kind of done a disservice also, because a lot of people want to see, an investigation in 60 minutes, from the setup to the investigation, to the history, to the reveal. Boom, we're done in 60 minutes. And that's really not how we operate or how we do things.
Well, you're on a much smaller scale without the production, I guess, money that they had to be able to do their show like that. So
absolutely, you're absolutely right on that one.
Have you ever have you ever felt like Scooby-Doo? Did you ever catch someone running a scam where you go, oh, it was Mr. Withers in his ghost outfit trying to scare people away so he get property cheaper or something? Have you ever discovered anyone like that?
No, we haven't. There's been some people that will call us in and, just because most people contact us via email, and there's some that we kind of question just because of the verbiage of some things, but we always answer. We always, take it that they want to be believed. And so we'll ask probing questions and stuff like that. But for the most part, people, there are a lot of people that legitimately feel that something's going on, and they either want validation of it or, as I said before, just want to be believed that they're not crazy. And so to this point, we have not found anybody like that. I'm sure they're out there. But we've been, kind of fortunate in the fact that what we found, we believe is truly unexplainable. Now, if somebody wants to come back to us and say, well, I believe it's this, this, and this, then I want to have that dialogue, because obviously I don't want to put out anything that isn't truly unexplainable. But so far, I think we've been very fortunate that we haven't had that experience yet.
Well, I also think that, when you go to some of these places, it's like what you talked about with TV shows. You have to remember it's a TV show. Well, I think some of these places that are haunted, that the people there maybe exaggerate the stories a little bit because they want to make it more appealing and sound more interesting than maybe what it is. And have you come across that, or do you find that the stories they tell you are pretty accurate?
We've come across some places like that we really haven't found anything that we would consider unexplainable. But most of the places that we've gone to we've actually found some things that we can't explain. For example, we went to the Exchange Hotel, which is in Gordonsville, Virginia, and this was a pre-Civil War hotel. And then during the Civil War, it was recommissioned into a Civil War hospital that saw both Union and Confederate soldiers. And there's over 750 reported deaths that happened in that hotel when it was a hospital, a Civil War hospital. And so there are a lot of reports of activity. And I think we were able to come away, validating some of those claims. So, and I'm sorry about that.
No,
so for example, there were 5 females in the building, and I can guarantee you there was no men in the building, and I can guarantee you that there were no children in the building at any point during our investigation that day and that night. And yet our voice recorders during the night picked up a male voice saying, I don't know, I'll be back at 4:30. And then it picked up a child's voice saying, hi, this is my bed. And then we were actually getting responses on some of our equipment that seemed to validate that there was something unexplainable going on in that location. So for us, like I said, a lot of the locations that we've been to, we've been fortunate enough to come away with some type of unexplainable evidence, paranormal evidence.
Do you ever run into people who are like, I don't want to say upset, but who are so cynical that they want to call you out and say, what are you doing? This is all nonsense, and you're creating these things. I mean, have you ever run into that? And if so, how do you handle those people?
And that's a great question. When you tell somebody that you're a paranormal investigator, they either look at you like you have 6 heads, or they want to tell you their ghost story. And so for those people that really, have that skepticism or that cynical attitude, for me, the response is, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm not trying to convince you that what I'm finding is the end all be all in paranormal evidence. What I'm doing is I'm going to these amazingly historical locations. I am having a very tactile experience with these historical locations, such as, putting my hands on bricks that were laid by Revolutionary War soldiers, or climbing the steps of the St. Augustine Lighthouse. And I'm putting together a historical narrative that still tells the story of those locations. And then I am putting forth an investigation where I'm controlling for everything, and what I'm left with is unexplainable. And if you want to believe that, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's fantastic also, because I don't think that I'm the end all be all expert in paranormal. I don't think anybody's an expert in paranormal research. And so for that, I say, again, watch it if you want something historical, watch it if you want something paranormal, but I'm not trying to convince you that I'm right. It's like trying to convince somebody that my religion is correct. correct. I'm not going to do that. But what I am putting together is a very cool what I feel is a cool historical story, coupling that with unexplainable things that we can't explain in the moment that we're there. And so I think because of that, because that's basically the approach that I take, I think a lot of people really, really respect us for that approach. Again, I'm not trying to beat it into anybody. I'm just putting it out there. And if you want to watch, watch.
I have my very best friend. He doesn't believe in spirits or ghosts or whatever you may want to call them. Not at all. But he is biggest horror fan. Like he loves horror stuff. And I go with the fact that you love horror movies so much. I can't believe you don't believe in ghosts or spirits or things. And he goes, I don't believe in that. He goes, I believe in crazy people. That's what scares me. So I told him, I said, we should go to one of these haunted places and spend the night. He goes, and he said he would be scared because he thinks someone's behind it. And the reason he says that is because, like you said, everyone wants to tell you a ghost story. I'll tell you one of mine.
Okay.
I was stationed in Germany, and I was an MP, and we stayed in these barracks that were renovated that used to be barracks of German soldiers. And they used to have a game room that was on the first floor, which was kind of strange because you had rooms on the first floor where people were sleeping. And one night, it was a weekend night, and we were playing pool or something, and we were a little loud, and it was like 1 or 2 in the morning. And so one of the guys comes out of the room and goes, "Hey guys, you mind keeping the noise down?" I said, "Oh, we're really sorry." And so I asked the guy, I said, "Why is the game room not up on the third floor? Because the third floor is completely empty." And he said, "Well, it used to be up on the third floor, but there are ghosts up there." And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure, okay." And so I just thought, he goes, "No, I'm telling you." He goes, we'd be playing pool, and the pool balls would start moving themselves. The games would start playing themselves, because they had the video games there and stuff. He goes, and the lights would start, like flickering stuff. And he goes, and people got scared and wouldn't go up there and use the game room anymore. So they moved it down to the first floor. So we had this third floor that had nothing in it. It had 2 doors on either side, and they were glass doors. And the only people who had keys to the doors were the captain and the first sergeant. Those were the only 2 people who had keys to the third floor. And you could see through from one end to the other end. You could see the entire third floor, and it was completely empty. Like I said, there were no rooms. It was just one big open room.
Okay.
Well, they told us about these marching, like you would hear soldiers marching, like German soldiers, the way German soldiers marched. And so, I didn't think anything about it because I was like, oh, they're just, because we're the newbies and they're just messing with us, right? Well, my room is on the second floor, and and one of my friends was in the room, and all of a sudden we were talking, and just all of a sudden you hear the footsteps. I mean, you hear soldiers marching like the Germans, like, and not just like one. I mean, like there's a platoon of soldiers marching. And I'm like, listen to that. That's so cool, And so I go, let's go up and see what it is. See if there's someone up there or something. And we kind of casually strolled up to the third floor and looked through, and there was nothing. But I thought, okay, I don't know. The next time it happened, I had a different friend. I said, run up the stairs. Let's get up there as quickly as we can to make sure nobody can just run out. We ran up there, and in less than 5 seconds, we were each up on either side, and we could see each other through the other doors, and there was not a soul up there. But I can tell you to this day that my friend goes, he goes, I don't think you're lying. I think you were mistaken. And so I go, okay. And so I thought, it's like, I don't know how to convince him that I know what I heard. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't imagination of my friend. We weren't drinking. We weren't doing drugs. It was just something that happened. And so I can appreciate what it must be like to be in your shoes, to have multiple experiences and have people just question your sanity maybe, or question your honesty. It's like,
Well, and to your friend's point, to earlier, I'm more afraid of the living than I am of the dead, honestly. So I mean, there's been times where we've been startled on these investigations, but we've never had a location where we've run out screaming or anything like that. That's really not our style. So, yeah, but the living, there are some people out there that definitely scare me more so than any paranormal experience.
Well, I have I have a question that's similar to what you were just saying, but I want to hold off on that because I want to kind of keep in the line of questions so that we're going in, because you're in fact you're I don't even have to lead you. You're going right down my list. I'm like, oh, she's um so what what do you, first off, what do you call these apparitions? I mean, what do you think they're called, or do you think they're ghosts, spirits, or um how would you, I guess, define them?
For us, we use, ghost or entity interchangeably, spirits as well. A lot of people are familiar with the term ghost, so we use that. But entity or spirit is what we really refer to them as. And for us, what we're going in to find or attempting to find are those that had a human existence. At some point, they were human, and for some reason, after their death, they are close, what I would say, closer to the veil between this realm and whatever's next. And so we go in with that mindset that we're attempting to tell the story or advance the story of somebody that was once living. So, for example, when we investigated the Ma Barker house in Central Florida, we go in with the mindset that we're attempting to communicate with Ma and Fred Barker, who were killed in that location. When we go into the Exchange Hotel, we're attempting to communicate with those soldiers or those doctors that had a human experience in that location. So that's what we're attempting to look for. Other investigators may have a different viewpoint, but for us and our team, that's the way we approach our investigations.
So what do you do to try to connect with them? I mean, because the only
Well, and
thing
that's a
I
great
know
question.
is like seance boards and stuff. I mean, do you do that, or is that?
No, we don't use seance boards. We don't use Ouija boards. We don't go in with that mindset. Essentially, what we do is when we go to a location, we research the history of that location, the events that were supposed to have occurred there, and the people that have played a part in those events. And we base our questions and our investigation on that research. So, for example, when we went to the Lizzie Borden house, we're attempting to communicate with Andrew and Abby Borden, those two that were killed there, or Lizzie Borden, who was said to have committed the murders. Same thing with the Villisca Axe murder house. We're attempting to communicate with the Moore family who was killed in that house. And so we base our investigations on the research that we do. And then we also take what we call trigger items, or items that we feel could help further communication between us and any entity that may be there. So, for example, when we went to Fort Mifflin, which is a Revolutionary War fort in Philadelphia, there was a casemate, and a casemate is where they held munitions. And this casemate was subterranean. It's about 7 feet underground. So there's no light pollution at all. There's no noise pollution at all. And it was held during the Revolutionary War. It was reconverted into a solitary confinement cell where they held this man that was tried for treason and eventually hung on the grounds of the fort for treason. So in that instance, we thought to ourselves, if I'm in solitary confinement, what would I want? Water and food were the first things that came to mind, and then possibly a cigarette. So we left water, bread, and a cigarette in that room. And so we left that for them, and we go in and say, these are items for you. We're leaving these for you. If you would like to communicate with us, we would welcome that opportunity to tell your story. And during that investigation, myself and another investigator, Cara, she and I went down into that room. We're the only two people in that room. There we have a camera on the door so you can make sure that nobody else comes in the door with us or into that room with us. And again, you've got to go about 7 feet underground to get back into this little room. And so it's completely quiet and we're asking questions. And I said, we left you some water and a cigarette, and we captured a man's voice saying, thank you. and we captured it on every piece of equipment that we had running in that room. And so for us, that was our way of communicating with him, because we acknowledged him as the human that he was, and we left him those trigger items that were germane to his situation in solitary confinement. So that's really how we approach all of our investigations. We go in with the mindset that we are here to tell your story. We're not here to disrupt you in any way. We're not here to provoke you in any way. We're legitimately here to tell the story of you in this location.
So when something like that happens and you hear this voice, do you still get excited, or have you had so many experiences that it's almost like, normal for you now, or you go, oh, great, we have a voice? Or do you still get excited when you have something like that?
No, to us, it's absolutely fascinating every time. And it's one of those things that really keeps us doing what we do and loving what we love to do. And a lot of the times also is we don't capture those voices in the moment, because when we go to these investigations, we have stationary equipment that we leave in different rooms or in different cell blocks or whatever, in each of these locations. So we'll go in and we'll set up night vision video cameras. We'll set up voice recorders that we just leave running throughout the night for the entire duration of the investigation. And a lot of times it's when we go back and review the footage or review the audio that we captured on those pieces of equipment that we find we actually captured something. So, going back and like, for example, back to the Exchange Hotel, those two, what we call EVPs, those two voices that we captured, we never heard them in the moment. It's just going back and reviewing the evidence. And even then it's like, oh yeah, this is pretty cool. So for us, the adrenaline is always there. The curiosity is to, who's making these noises or why are they communicating with us is always going to be there, I think.
I want to ask you a question, because you had said something earlier. You said, when we go there, we're attempting to reach spirits or these apparitions that were once human life. So are there different types of ghosts or apparitions or entities that I like? What comes to mind is like, because of the movie Poltergeist, are there, and then of course the ectoplasma, I guess, or whatever it's called. So are there different types of entities?
For us, again, the way we approach it is it's those that had that human existence. But on the scale of those, there are going to be those that are darker in nature. Now, I'm not going to say demonic. I'm going to say darker, or more, not evil is not even the word I want to use. So for example, I'll just put it in this context. When we go to a penitentiary, like the Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Tennessee, we know that we're going to encounter spirits that are not great. They're darker because they weren't great in life, right? We're going into a former maximum security prison that held the worst of the worst in society. So we know that we're probably going to find something in there, or communicate with something that doesn't want us there, or that's darker in nature. I still think that entity had a human existence, but it wasn't a great human existence. So they're going to remain that way in the spirit world. Now, there are those that will go out and say things that are, attempt to find things that are demonic. We don't do that. I do believe that there are demons out there, but that's basically the bad and the good and the bad in the world. And so that's an entirely different, and I wouldn't even consider them ghosts or entities, but they are out there. People have experienced them, but not to the extent that media or television media makes it out to be, or the other paranormal groups make it out to be. I think those examples are very few and far between. We've gone to some of the most haunted locations in the country, and I say we have never experienced anything that I would consider demonic. Now, again, there are things that are darker, but those are just bad. Essentially, they were bad humans, and we don't really attempt to further the communication with those individuals or those entities. So, for example, back to Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, there's one cell block that's supposed to house a spirit that is darker. So in that instance, we left a voice recorder and a night vision video camera in the room, and we said, if you want to communicate with us, this is the way to do it. Otherwise, we acknowledge that this is your space. We're going to leave you to it because there are other places on the property that we can investigate, because we feel that there are entities that legitimately want to communicate with us and tell our story. So we don't really need to provoke anything that's dark. So to answer your question in a very long-winded way, the entities that we're attempting to communicate with are those that we feel have a human existence. And we really don't try to communicate or summon, if you will, for lack of a better term, anything that's demonic.
Okay, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. However,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm going to ask you, these ghosts, these spirits or whatever, you feel like they're present, like that they're not just some sort of form of energy that just repeats itself every night, that it's sort of like I remember hearing a theory that these spirits may be, the past, and because because energy doesn't die, it just keeps generating. So what you're seeing is our actions from the past is what you're catching. But you believe, if I'm correct, is that these entities are aware of your presence. They're present. They understand what's going on. So this isn't just some energy mass that's just going through the motions of time, I guess.
And that's a great way to say that. And I'll answer it like this. There are two types of hauntings, what we consider two types of hauntings. The first one is what we call intelligent. So those entities that know that we're there, that communicate with us, that answer questions and give us responses based on our questions. And so that I'd say is probably about 75% of the unexplained paranormal activity that we've found. There's also what's called residual hauntings. And those are essentially, to your point, blips in time that will repeat themselves. So essentially, if you think of it like a record and there's a scratch on that record, every time the needle hits that scratch, it's gonna bleep on that record. So that's kind of the same thing as what a residual haunting is. And so we do run across residual hauntings. It's those things that aren't, they don't interact with us in any way, but it still happens. So for example, when we went to the Ma Barker house, again, this was the site of the 1935 shootout between Ma Barker and Fred Barker, two members of the Barker Carpus gang. And they had a shootout between those two and the FBI, who were attempting to capture them. And Ma and Fred were killed in the upstairs bedroom of that house. And so when we investigated, we were actually the first team allowed to investigate that house. So we decided on a two-part investigation. The first one was, it was on the night of the anniversary of the shootout. So the shootout happened on January 16th, 1935, and we left all of our equipment running on January 15th, 2019, and it ran through the morning of January 16th. So we wanted to encompass the hours of the shootout. So when we left that equipment in there, it was in there for about 14 hours. When we came back, we started listening to all of the recordings and everything, and we were capturing things like footsteps, what we felt was a chair being dragged across the room. We captured a man saying, "Get out." But in the room where Ma and Fred were killed, the voice recorder picked up at around 5:30 a.m., which is when the shootout actually started. The voice recorder picked up two voices. The first one said, "Freddie." The next one said, "Yeah, Ma." And the first one said, "Get ready." Now, to me, I think that is a residual haunting. I think that's actually what was said the morning of the shootout. And because there was so much energy released at that time, at that point in time during the shootout, that essentially imprinted itself. So there is a possibility to capture that again. It's a residual haunting. Now, when we went back and did a second, there was a two-part investigation. My sister and I went back about 2 weeks later, and we stayed the night in the house. Now, at that point, we were getting direct responses to our questions. So we would ask questions and we would have responses in return. And so those are intelligent hauntings. They hear us, they see us, they can communicate with us, and they answer our questions. So those are the two types of hauntings that we experience.
Okay, so I know you take a very scientific approach to this, but if I heard someone say, Freddie, get ready, does it raise the hair on your arms? Like, do you get goosebumps when you hear that? Does it just, do you get that feeling, holy crap, like this is This is
We actually do, because again, when we start listening to the audio, and for example, say we're in a location for 10 hours and I've got 10 voice recorders running, I'm listening to 100 hours of audio, and most of that time, like 99% of the time when I'm listening to it, all I hear is just static of the night, right? And so when something comes across, oh yeah, I'll come up off the couch, I'll come up off my chair, and it's like, holy crap, we got it. And that's, but to me, it's so exciting. I clip that section, I send it to my team members. I say, hey, listen, what do you think you hear in this clip? But for me, it's absolutely exciting, and it's really what drives us to keep doing this.
Okay, so next question is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe, and this is two-part, do you believe that spirits can leave where they're at and follow you home? And if you believe that, do you ever worry about that happening?
I do believe it. And what we do when we go into a location is we'll say a prayer of protection before we go in, and we'll say a prayer of protection when we come out. And we also really set our boundaries when we go in. So for example, say we walk into Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. The first thing that we'll say is, we're here to communicate with you. We're here to tell your story. You're not allowed to hurt us. We're not going to hurt you. We're not going to provoke you, but you cannot harm us in any way, and you cannot come with us in any way. And so we set those boundaries straight off. Now, there are instances where we say, I'll allow you to pull my pant leg. If you're here, touch my hair. I'll give you permission to do that. But I think because we kind of set those boundaries, we have not had anything follow us home. We've never been physically attacked or assaulted in any of these locations. There's been numerous times where I've felt my pant leg being pulled, or I've felt something grab my hand. We've had our hair tugged on numerous occasions, and that's fine. But we've never, like I said, we've never been accosted in any way past that. And I think it's because we really do go in with a sense of respect. We go in with a sense of respect for the location, as well as the individuals or the entities that are supposed to reside there. And I think because of that, we're getting respect in return. As I said before, we don't go in with bravado. We don't go in with chest pumping or provoking. And I think also because we're an all-female team, we automatically have a sense of empathy. So not so much that we're empathic, I'm not going to go that far, but we approach it with a sense of empathy. And I think because of that, we do have a pretty good success rate of finding things that are unexplainable.
All right. So when you're dealing, let's say, with these darker spirits, if you will, do you think that when you say this prayer, or when you tell them they can't do certain things, do you think they have to respect that? Are you ever worried that maybe these darker souls would not respect that?
We always run that possibility. But again, for us, I think because we don't go in with, as you see in television shows sometimes, saying, throw this chair or punch me, or I'm not going to believe you're here. We don't do that. And so for us, I think that there is kind of that mutual respect. If we go into a location and we feel that the energy is changing, or it's starting to get, as I would just, in general terms, say darker, then we leave that room, because we're not going to put ourselves in a position where, we're going to get attacked or anything like that. Again, that's not why we're here. That's not what we want to do. And so we're more than happy to leave the room and just let them have that room, let them have that space, and respect them for that. And we'll go somewhere else. That's not a problem for us. And so it's just, again, one of those things that I think we've been very fortunate to not really have to deal with, because we don't go looking for it. It's back to your point about using a Ouija board. We don't do that, not because I think a Ouija board is going to open a portal or whatever, but because of the negative connotation behind it. Same thing with provoking. There's that negative connotation behind it, and we just don't do it. It's just not in our wheelhouse of things to do.
Right. Well, when you were saying that, it made me think of that knucklehead that had a show that was like, he would like, come at me, dude. It's like talking, like, come at. I was like, if I was a spirit, I would smack him so hard in the head. He would never ask any spirit to come at him again.
Yeah,
So
and you do have those people, but that's not our style. So
right.
I'm not going to disparage any other team if that's how they want to build their audience base. That's fine, but that's not what we do.
Yeah, well, you take the high road. I'll disparage you. So I was never a fan of that show. I didn't watch it very much because I do have a respect for people who take the scientific approach and really are looking to find answers instead of just trying to create sensationalism so people will watch your goofy show. And that's what he had, where you had like ghost hunters. I completely respected what they did because I think they took it, the high road and took the more scientific approach and they debunked a lot of stuff, so they they didn't try to make it into something that it wasn't. So
Exactly.
so I'm going to skip this. I'll come back to this question here because right now the question I want to ask you is, where does this leave you as far as your belief in the afterlife? Do you believe there's an afterlife?
hmm And that's a great question. We all on the team come from a very religious background. So, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. I believe that there is another realm. I'll call it heaven. So that's what I believe is the next. So I do believe that there's an afterlife because, as you said earlier, we're made up of energy and energy cannot be created or destroyed. We have to go somewhere. But, I think I diverge a little bit from basic Christian belief in the fact that we don't ascend immediately. There are instances where we're either allowed to stay behind or we're staying behind for some reason or some purpose. And then after that is fulfilled, we'll move on to whatever's next. So I work with the premise that there's three reasons why a spirit would stay behind. The first one is they do have unfinished business. There's something that needs to be fulfilled. There's something that needs to be done before that spirit can move on to the next realm. So for an example of that, my granddaddy died in 1986, and he and my nana, they loved each other, so they were essentially soulmates. And so when he passed in 1986, it was really hard on my family, but we moved on. And I was very close with my nana, and in 2016. I had a very, very vivid dream that my granddaddy came to me in this dream. And I mean, it was very specific. I can tell you where he was standing, how he was standing, what he was wearing, what he smelled like. It was the most vivid dream I've ever had. And he looked at me. I said, in the dream, I said, "Granddaddy, what do you want?" And he looked at me and he said, "I'm waiting for your Nana and you're going to be getting a call soon." And then he turned and he walked through a wall. And so I woke up. I actually kind of thought it was a nightmare. So I woke up and I'm just sitting there for a minute. And I told my mom and I told my dad about it. And we really didn't think anything of it because at that time, even though Nana was 93, I mean, she was driving, she was dancing twice a week. She had two boyfriends that neither one knew of each other. So, I mean, Nana had it going on. So there was no reason to think that anything would happen with Nana. But she ended up falling and having that accident. She broke her hip. So, and she never really recovered from that. So we had to put her into hospice. And about 3 weeks later, she passed. And that same day, about 2 hours after she passed, I looked at my twin sister and I said, "I know where she's going. She's going to that house in the dream, and she's going to meet up with Granddaddy because I know he's waiting for her." And so we took some of our equipment and we went to the house, and through a series of questions, we have two what we call K2 meters. And these meters are handheld meters and they're designed to measure electricity. So if there's no electricity in the room or anything that's giving off electricity, theoretically, they should not go off. And so the power had been turned off in the house because it had been a while since Nana had been in there. So we went to the spot where I had the dream, or in my dream where it was. And so we had the one K2 meter is gray and the other is black. And I said, "Nana, if you're here, can you just go to the black meter?" And the black meter went off. I said, "Can you stop that and just go to the gray meter?" The gray meter went off. And so through a series of questions, we were able to determine what I feel is communicating with Nana and Granddaddy, that they had met up together and they moved on after that. And the reason I say that is because we went back 1 week later just to validate. We wanted to do the exact same experiments. We did that and nothing happened. None of our equipment went off. We asked the same questions in the exact same spot, nothing. And so for me, that was Granddaddy's unfinished business, right? He was waiting for Nana. Once she passed, they met up and they moved on. So I don't think that Nana and Granddaddy are spirits in this realm anymore. I think they've moved on to whatever's next. So that's the first one, unfinished business. The second one is that they're stuck. They know that that they're dead, but for some reason they can't find the way to get to whatever's next. And so for an example of that, we were at a Hales Bar Dam in Tennessee, and the reports are, so Hales Bar Dam was an operation, it was from 1913 to 1962. And there's a series of tunnels that run under this dam. And school kids would use it to get from one end of the one side of the river to the other. So in the mid 1950s, there was an accident and some children were killed in those tunnels. So while we were there doing some what we call EVP sessions, asking questions, Michelle said, "Why are you here? Why haven't you moved on?" And we captured a child's voice saying, "I can't, I'm stuck." So in that instance, he knows he's dead. He knows he's stuck. He knows he has to move on, but he can't find whatever the mechanism is for him to get to whatever's next. And then the third thing is, or the third reason I believe that spirits stay is they fear retribution in the next realm for the life they lived on Earth. And I feel we find this a lot in prisons and jails. So those guys who or women that didn't have the greatest existence as humans are afraid to move on whatever's next because they feel they're going to face some type of eternal retribution. And so I think that's why we find a lot of people in those areas. So, you know, for us, those are the three theories that we work on when we go into these investigations.
Okay. That's, I mean, just, here, so I'm going to skip around the questions because now I'm saying, okay, you have all these voices and stuff that you have recorded. Where can people hear your recordings? Where can they find, and also, do you have any video? Because it seems like, I mean, obviously that seems to be more rare than the voices. Do you have video of any spirits or anything like that?
Yes, we do. So to answer your first question, you can go to www.soulsistersparanormal.com. We're also very active on Facebook under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And then everything that we do is also on YouTube under Soul Sisters Paranormal. And all of our videos, all of our investigations are on those three platforms. And to answer your second question, yes, we've captured things on camera. One of the best examples I would say was we'll return to Fort Mifflin. So we were investigating Fort Mifflin, and that same casemate where we captured the man's voice saying thank you. The way we set that room up is we had a night vision video camera in the doorway. It was sitting on the floor of the doorway, looking into that room. And then directly beside it, about 6 inches forward, was a laser grid. So when you turn on the laser grid, these lasers are all over this room, right? So the theory is that if anything walks through the room, it will cut off the beams of the laser grid. So we set up the camera, we set up the laser grid, and we left the room. And we're investigating on a completely different side of the fort, doing some EVP work and another casemate. And during that time, a shadow figure walks from the wall. It goes from the right to the left, and it cuts off the beams of the laser as it's walking across. So that's the first time that we ever captured anything on camera. And to us, it was very compelling. It was actually shown to ghost hunters, and they thought it was pretty interesting as well. So that was our first example of that. And when we were in Hales Bar Dam, we set up a small glow-in-the-dark balloon that was inside a room that was internal inside the dam. So there was no way any wind or anything could get to this balloon. And during the night, it started rolling around, which was very interesting. Actually, this is the best one. We were at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. And again, this was a maximum security prison. It was built in 1896. It was in operation until 2009. And it was where the worst of the worst were housed. So this was the second time that we investigated Brushy. So we were there. There was myself, another investigator of ours, Kim, and then Jenny. And then we were joined by Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations and her camera guy, Josh. So there was only 5 of us on the property that night. So we were in the gymnasium, and we had some things in the middle of the gym that have lights on them. So we had a glow-in-the-dark balloon. We had those K2 meters, which have a little indicator light on them. And we have another piece of equipment called a REM pod that has a red indicator light on top of it. So we're standing back probably about 15 feet from everything that's lit up in the middle of that gymnasium. And otherwise it's completely dark. It's pitch black. And so while we're asking questions, something comes from my right to left and it runs past me and it cuts off my view of everything that's in the middle of the room. And I say, holy shit, did y'all see that? And Miranda was holding a camera called an SLS camera. And generally speaking, what this camera is, it's a camera connected to an iPad that has an algorithm on it. And when that camera perceives a human figure in the room, it will put that image as a stick figure on the screen. And so as I'm saying it and I'm seeing this, her camera guy is focused on that camera, and he's showing us that she is seeing an anomaly on that SLS camera. So I see the shadow figure, Miranda's capturing the anomaly on the SLS camera. And so as Josh pans his camera back up, and now everybody's focused on the lights in the middle of the room again, you see the shadow run across back from left to right. And so is extremely compelling because we all saw it, and we actually caught it on camera, and you can see it cut off very quickly, darts across, and it cuts off the view of the camera in front of the lights.
Wow. And that's what I was going to ask you, if you'd actually experienced that in person with your own eyes and not just on camera. So that's amazing. And I don't know if this is the proper word because you probably don't get scared, but what would you consider the scariest personal experience during your time of doing this?
We were at the old Gilchrist County Jail, which is and this is in Trenton, Florida, which is about an hour's west of Gainesville, Florida. And this is just an old county jail. It was built in 1928. It was in operation until 1968. And it's just a small jail. It's 2 stories. It's got 4 little cells on the first story. It's got 4 little cells on the second story. And then there's a small jailer's cottage that's connected to a doorway. So a very small footprint. And so the first time I investigated there, I was actually with, again, Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. And she and I were the only 2 people on the property that night. So when we were talking to the owner before we went in to do the investigation, she said, "Do y'all carry?" And we're like, "Yes, we both carry handguns. So we're armed when we go to these places." And so she said, "I highly recommend you keep your guns on you at all times during the night, because that's the location that this place is in, right? It's not in the best area of the county." So in fact, after the jail closed in 1968, it sat abandoned and actually became a location where a lot of drug deals went down. So not a great part of town, right? So we had our guns with us and we're in there doing the investigation. And for the first hour or so, we weren't feeling anything. None of our equipment was really picking up anything. And so Miranda says, "I wonder if they think we're law enforcement because we have our guns on us." So she said, "We're going to take them off to show you that we're not law enforcement. We're just here to investigate." So there's a cot in one of the cells. So I take my gun off and I put it on the cot. And as Miranda's taking her gun off and putting it on the cot, she goes, I'm putting it down nice and slow. Here, I'm putting my gun down nice and slow. And as soon as she did that, a man's voice behind us said, "Good." And nobody was there. There was no man there. So it was just a voice we both heard. We captured it on the voice recorder. And after that, the night was on. I mean, we were seeing shadow figures. We were capturing shadow figures on camera. All of our equipment was going off. We were capturing EVPs. It was probably if I can call it investigation, a pure investigation, it was probably the most pure investigation we've been on, because every piece of equipment was validating every other piece of equipment. And that just really builds our case. It really gives us that compelling, unexplainable evidence when all of these pieces of equipment are going off. And so I think that because that night we actually saw in the moment 2 shadow figures run across one of the cell blocks. And I'd say that was probably the one that was the most startling for me, that really kind of made the hair stand up, because it's like, this place is extremely active. But at the same time, while my hair is standing up, I'm also fascinated, because it's just like this is a very active location, and we're capturing all of this on camera and on voice recorders.
And you said this is just is north of Gainesville?
It's just west of Gainesville in Trenton, Florida.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's in Gilchrist County.
Can anyone go to this place and experience this, or is this something that you set up with the owners of the property, or is how do you
Yeah, and that's a great question. All of the locations that we go to, we get prior permission from the owners to be there. We never trespass. We that's just not right. So we don't do any trespassing. So yeah, we set this up with the owners. A majority of the locations that we go to, they are open for public tours and or ghost tours. So you can just contact them. Most of them have websites that you just contact them and set it up, and they'll allow you to go in.
Have you guys been abroad yet? Like Soul Sisters International? Have you done that yet?
Not yet, but as soon as this pandemic crap is over, we're hoping to get over to England. We're set up to go to England in September. So fingers crossed that all goes well. And that will be the first time that we've gone international.
That'll be very cool. I look forward to seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, then, out of all the places you visited, what is the most haunted place that you've been to?
I would say the old Gilchrist County Jail for us, again, just because the amount of activity that we were able to capture there. As I said before, it's fascinating when every piece of equipment in your arsenal is indicating that something is going on and validating every other piece of equipment. So that for me would probably be the most active. The Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary was also very active for us. So we captured some great evidence there. Fort Mifflin was great, again, because we captured EVPs as well as that shadow figure that I mentioned before. The Grand Old Lady Hotel in North Carolina, in Sylva, North Carolina, that place is absolutely fascinating. And we were fortunate enough to actually rent out the entire hotel for a weekend. And this was a hotel that was built in 1905, and it was built for the railroad. So, it's a grand hotel. It's got 100 rooms, all original hardwood floors, windows, doors, all of that. And so last year, we rented out the entire location, and it was myself, my twin sister Jenny, and Miranda from Ghost Biker Explorations. So Miranda did her investigation on Friday, and Jenny and I did our investigation on Saturday, but we stayed there the entire weekend. And when Jenny and I were doing our investigation, we were up on the third floor, and Miranda was down in our base camp room. And so we were just Jenny and I were asking questions, and we heard this tremendous crash. And so I yelled down, I'm like, Miranda, is that you? And Miranda yells up, was that y'all? And so we kind of met in the middle, and we started going through rooms, and a table had been overturned. Something had actually flipped over a table. And so that was pretty fascinating. And then we were all three of us down in the kitchen, and we were just asking questions. And I said, can you just give us some type of a sign that you're here? And the coffee pot turned on. So that was pretty fascinating. And then on that Saturday night, there's one hallway in the third floor that's called Henry's Hallway, and it's supposed to be the most active location in the hotel. So we decided to get the rooms are divided up into single rooms or suites. So we decided to sleep in one of the suites that was up adjacent to Henry's Hallway. So it's a room that has three beds, but one main door to get into that room. So Miranda was sleeping in the little outer room, and Jenny and I went back into the back bedroom. But again, it just has that one door to get in and out of the whole room. So we shut the door, and I have a video camera on the inside of the door and a video camera on the outside of the door. So that you know that there's nobody approaching this door. And so we said our good nights. We turned off the lights. We said our good nights. And at that, about 15 minutes after we said good night, a male's voice on the outside of the door says, "Please don't go." And it's probably one of the best EVPs we've ever captured. And again, because I have a video camera on both doors, you can verify that there's nobody else there standing there.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had a question and it just skipped my mind. What was it? I hate when that happens. It gets more frequent as you get older. But I was this way when I was 17. So I'll come back. I'll figure what it is. You're going to Tennessee because we talked about having you come into the studio, but you have
Mhm,
a couple trips set up to go to Tennessee. Where's that at
mhm.
in Tennessee? Where are you going? Um, and what we also talked about is having you in the studio when you get back and talking about the experiences that you had in Tennessee, and maybe hopefully you'll have some new video clips and some more audio that you can show and show us.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I'm in Virginia right now. I'll be going back down to Tennessee, but we're actually, aside from investigations, we also go to what are called paracons, which are paranormal conferences. So we'll be speaking in Athens, Tennessee, in a couple weeks, and then I'll also be at a symposium for Arkansas State University. We got asked to present at their Delta Symposium, so we'll be there as well. So for Tennessee, we're again doing the paracon there, but we also have, aside from our investigations, we have a series called Landmarks, Legends, and Lore, which isn't so much just based on paranormal evidence, but basically legends and lore from different parts of the country or in different states. So we'll be actually filming for some of our Landmark, Legends, and Lore episodes in Tennessee, as well as probably Georgia, maybe dipping down into Alabama as well. So that's kind of where we're going with that. Our next investigation, we're actually going to Texas in July. Yeah, we're going to Texas in July, but we're going to Milwaukee in May, trying to keep my schedule straight. So we've got a lot of stuff going on in the next month. And then we'll, like I said, hopefully get over to England in September.
So this paracon that you go to, is this made up of people like you who are doing these paranormal studies, or are these people who are just interested in the paranormal and want to meet people like you that have these stories that you can relate to them? Or
It's both. There are paracons that are simply conferences where the public can attend and hear us speak, or there are paracons where we just have a booth set up and you just do like a meet and greet session and go to a historic location. This one in Athens, Tennessee, will be at the Klieg Mansion there in Tennessee. So that's where we'll actually be setting up, and so people can tour it as well as meet different teams in the paranormal community. So those are the things that we kind of do when we're not investigating. So it kind of keeps us busy.
It sounds like it. Well, I'm looking forward to when you get back from Tennessee and having you in the studio and talking with you about more of your experiences, and even I'd like to find out a little bit more about the Paracon, because I think there's probably a lot of people out there interested in it that would be interested, probably don't know that they exist and would be interested in going to something like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to our Facebook page or our website, all of that information is there, where they're going to be located, the dates they're going to be held at. We also have one in New Mexico coming up in October as well. So we're starting to really branch out and go nationwide with them. But just keep an eye on our Facebook page under Soul Sisters Paranormal, or on our website, www.soulsistersparanormal.com. We have all of that listed there.
and I'll make sure that we, for those who are listening and watching, I'll make sure that we have the links listed below, so that way you can just click on it and take you right to the sites, so that way you can check it out. So, well,
Sounds great.
I really appreciate your time. This was really a fascinating, interesting topic to talk about, and I really appreciate your professionalism, like how you approach this. I just think that's,
Well,
in order for people to take this kind of stuff seriously, it needs to be approached from a scientific point of view, rather than just, you know, what you think or what you feel, what you believe. The
mhm.
fact that you go into it looking at it with open mind is I think a necessity for us to find out what's going on. So I appreciate that.
Thanks, Kurt. I appreciate that. Appreciate you saying that. And we try for, for, even though we're part of a subculture, we do try to bring that professionalism into it as best we can. So thank you for saying that.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I'm kind of like tongue tied because there's so much I just, so many fascinating things that you said that it's hard to like process it all and go, you know, because I completely believe what you're telling me. And yet there's that part of me that's going, this is just almost too fantastical, but I know it exists because like I said, I've had my own experiences, and so I think it's challenging for the average person because as we get older, we tend to not believe as much in things, even when there's proof of it, we tend to go, oh well, we just dismiss it. We don't even try to um, try to debunk it. We just dismiss it because we don't allow ourselves to go that way. Because if we can't debunk it, all of a sudden that kind of throws a monkey wrench into our belief system, and we don't like when things like that happen. But
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, and I appreciate the fact that there are people like you out there doing this, and that it's fascinating, honestly. So thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate the time today.
Well, folks, that's going to be our show for today. Thank you for joining us as always. I'm sure that you'll be just as amazed by this episode as I was. So again, I want to thank Kristy for being such a great guest on the show. And until next time, be safe, take care, and wear your mask.